For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss his column titled Leadership in Question Part 7, Chief Albert Luthuli's leadership comprised multiple, mutually respective identities. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
So, Professor, why do you place so much weight on identities in South Africa and Luthuli coexisting with those belief systems and ways of being other than one he adhered to? Does this not undermine unity as one people?
You know, the question of identity has always been a problematic issue. When the ANC was formed as the Native National Congress, Pixley Ka-Isaka Seme said, "We are one, let's do away with tribal animosities." Now there's a difference between antagonism between people and having an identity where they observe certain customs and cultural practices and see themselves as being particular components of the population. And I think it's very important that we have to coexist with people who are not all the same. We have to listen to them and respect who they are, men or women, straight or gay, African, colored or Indian, different components of the African people, etc., etc. And I think what was important about Luthuli is that he became president of the Natal ANC just after the conflict between Africans and Indians. And it was very important, especially the Africans being the majority, to take steps to bring peace between the communities. And he formed a very close relationship with the Indian congresses, and it clearly filtered down to all the people, or not all, but to a lot of people in the ANC. And Dorothy Nyembe says she used to be anti-Indian, but Chief Luthuli said, everyone who is born in South Africa belongs to South Africa, African, Indian, white, colored, whatever it happens to be. So I think for peace in this country, we have to not just tolerate difference, we have to respect the right of people to be who they want to be.
And Professor, you also refer to imagery in regard to Luthuli. Why is it important?
You know, I didn't write a lot about it in this column, but when I used to study India, what I found very interesting is that Gandhi used imagery a lot. For example, he was first an advocate or a barrister wearing these fancy clothes, and he gradually wore less and less till he was wearing a loincloth because he wanted to identify with the poor. Now, when you look at Luthuli, he is a Christian, he is a chief, he is an ANC volunteer, and every one of these identities carries with it certain imagery. For example, there are pictures of him with a picture of Christ in the background, or reading the Bible, or reading Gandhi, which conveys peace. But now the uniform of the Congress volunteers has some militaristic connotations. It's not just a uniform. People don't usually wear uniforms unless they're in the army. And when he went to get the Nobel Prize, he wore the regalia of a Zulu chief. And when you break down the different elements, the necklace that he's wearing has the claws of a sort of wild bird. A number of these things are not, they don't convey peace. They also can, he's getting a peace prize, but he's also wearing imagery which represents something more than that. Now, when I wrote on whether or not Chief Luthuli supported the armed struggle, one of the things I invoked was the ambiguity in the imagery that he wore, that he actually had ambiguous imagery, and that this was an indication in my mind of his consciousness encompassing more than just peace. Believe that nonviolence was a principle with Chief Luthuli, it's a principle with me, but I also believe that there are exceptional circumstances when the clause of the aggression or of self-defense using whatever weaponry you can are necessary. And I think that imagery is important from that point of view. That's in my view. But there are other images. For example, you can see there's a picture of him carrying a little puppy under his chin, and it's very gentle. So what you see with Luthuli is a number of different images which communicate different things.
And lastly, Professor, you also speak of Luthuli being the first South African leader who had a following amongst all the people of the country. Can you elaborate and also tell us why this has a bearing on his death?
Well, Robert Vincent, who's written a book on Luthuli, says that Luthuli was Mandela before Mandela, but the truth of the matter is that before Mandela had a following amongst whites, Luthuli had this following. I report in the article how people danced, whites danced behind him in Cape Town, down the street. And I think for the apartheid regime, what Luthuli was showing is that antagonism between black and white was not inevitable, that it was even possible that whites would follow an African leader. And this was something that threatened the apartheid regime. And in my view, that could well have been a motive for killing him. Now, he died allegedly while crossing a railway line and was hit by a train. Now, he crossed that railway line every day of his life. So he knew very well about the trains coming, what time they came, and all of that. So his family don't believe that was an accident. There is a priest called Scott Cooper who wrote a book, Bound by Faith, where he is at great pains to argue that Luthuli's death there was no wrongdoing there. I believe that there needs to be proper investigation. One of the grandsons told me that his father, who's now dead, Sibusiso Luthuli, was once approached by a white man who said to him, do you want to know how your father died? He said, yes. He said, well, give me 5,000 rands or something like that. Now, you know, these Luthulis are not into taking money. They said, no, I won't take money. But, you know, you probably need to accept money like that to see some things that you may never see. You may have, when you investigative reporters, I don't know how they operate, but sometimes to get some information, maybe they do have to pay something, but then they have to assess, was the information given to me just because I gave money, or is it the truth? So there are some people who actually approached family members to say they knew what happened, and it wasn't the train just hitting him by accident.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about his column titled Chief Albert Luthuli's Leadership Comprised Multiple, Mutually Respective Identities.